Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Thank you very much for hour number 2. Joining us for hour number 2 of Beyond the Beltway. And we've got a full board of lights. Let's head to them right now. Let's go to Greg in Portland, Oregon. Go ahead. You're on the air, Greg.
Hey, hello. So on the apathetic people that are not voting before Trump, I believe that it was because there was nothing in it for the people. Actually, the Democrats and the Republicans, as much as they fought, they were actually, I think, had the same goal, and that was to use promises that were actually lies to stay in power and use their corrupt ways to keep in power and make money just for themselves, for the political groups in Washington on both sides. Now that Trump has come into power, he is revealing that corruptness and started the process of removing that portion of the corruptness of the political system.
Do you believe then, if we were to look ahead to November, because you said that maybe they felt that there was nothing in it for them, when you have candidates that are going to be promising either Medicare for all or free college tuition, do you, as some of the Bernie Sanders supporters have suggested, or Elizabeth Warren to some extent, do you think the fact that people might be getting something at least perceived for free in their mind, that will turn more people out? In other words, if people thought that of 100 million people, if they thought they would get a free college education, is that going to drive them to the polls?
Well, I think that's part of the promises that are actually lies in many ways. And ultimately, yes, to your question, I think it'll probably bring a few out on the Democratic side. But again, they're promises that are actually lies. And also, what is that saying about people that are not going to be pulling their own weight and all they want is free stuff, and they're not going to contribute to the American society when all they do is take?
To me, it means that maybe within those 100 million people, there may be a large percentage of people that really don't care about participating. They want theirs, and they're not going to contribute. And just as they don't contribute to who is elected president, they don't contribute in any way. And that may be one of the answers. And if somebody's saying, hey, here's a free college education, that may drive people to the polls. I want to hear from our progressives whether you think there's
I
truth to that.
I paid more money in federal income tax last year than Amazon, Netflix, FedEx, the NFL, and GE combined. So if the caller or anyone else is going to talk about making an investment in the country, why don't we have corporations who are profiting in the hundreds of millions or billions make an investment in the country before you come at poor and working people looking for an affordable college education or looking for a way to obtain insulin if they're diabetic so they don't die from the lack of it before you,
Josh, let's hear from the Republicans now.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to work. I think America is still a center-right country when it comes to work ethic. And I think that Greg got it right that, people, these handouts, they're tired of it.
Who's not working? Who's getting the handouts?
And to be fair, I'm going to say something that I agree with you in part about the corporate handouts. That is disgusting that those if it's true that they don't pay income taxes, that's crazy. We need a fair tax system. And but all of this free stuff that the Democrats are promising, I think most people recognize it for what it is.
Stephanie, what about the point about corporations not paying their fair share or anything?
Well, when you say fair share, I'm thinking about the fair tax they're imposing here in Illinois. I'm going to have a flash. I'm going to pass out. But it's okay. We know when they are taxed, they're going to pass it on to the consumer. We know that. And we talk about all the good things Amazon, those companies are doing, providing jobs and making sure people are working. And it's a great, capitalism is the greatest thing, has saved a lot of people from poverty and everything else that's wrong with the world. We know socialism has never worked, but it doesn't stop the left from trying to push that agenda down our throat. And when we think about what we're facing in November 2020, all those candidates on the other side are trying to undo all the great things that Donald Trump has done so far that he's been in since he's been in office. They're going to undo everything. And name one of those candidates. I would love to hear from our friends here on the left. Which one of those candidates has a chance of beating Trump? Because he's putting Americans first. He's putting our interests first. And where they're going to put illegals, because remember, illegal brown is the new black vote. And that's what they're going after. They're going to give them all these resources and take them from hardworking Americans. So which one of those candidates can beat Trump? Not one.
Peter.
Well, I mean, I can't even comprehend what I just heard, but I'll speak to Greg's point. Generally, if I were going to get free health care, it wouldn't suddenly make me just sit at home and get prescriptions or go to the. I mean, I think
Would
one
it make
day.
you vote?
Yeah, it would make me vote.
The question is, how do you get 100 million people? How do you drive them to the polls? And I'm just saying is that one of the reasons why, I mean, I guess a broader question would be the people who don't vote, are they dumb or are they smart?
I'll respond to you. I think the people who don't vote because voting in the past has never helped them. I had an Uber driver the other day taking me to the airport, and we got to talking about politics, and he'd been a citizen for something like 35 years. He'd never voted once, and asked him why. He said, I come from a country where voting doesn't really matter. And everything I've seen in America showed me voting doesn't really matter.
Blue Chicago
We had a
vote,
good
it doesn't
conversation overall. I think what this election has to be about, if there is any hope of beating Donald Trump, who's riding the benefit of a great economy, with massive air quotes, it has to be about turnout. It has to be a massive turnout. And what can motivate people to turn out? Not, I'm going to have a free healthcare plan or I'm going to have free college. It's the idea that the country will become more equal, that you won't have people going bankrupt because they're paying medical bills. You won't have people going to their 40s and 50s with immense student loan debt. When most of the Western world, most of the Western world, Stephanie, most of the Western world, most of the countries we call wealthy countries, education, college education is not prohibitively expensive.
And it wasn't prohibitively expensive in the United States until the late 1980s.
But if you're talking about, I'm going to speak to your point. If the list of corporations that don't pay any taxes and everybody
Federal income tax.
Federal income tax that we're talking about, this is what Elizabeth Warren rattles off, and she rattles it off more than Bernie. But Bernie is also going after billionaires. So my question is, along comes Michael Bloomberg, a billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
How does he become the guy that rallies these 100 million people to turn out for him? Or the other question I would say, and this is to the Republicans, is he the guy that gets suburban women who don't like, many of whom don't like Donald Trump, who showed up in 2018? Is he the guy that gets them out because he's perceived to be the more moderate person?
Yes.
Or, got a lot of questions here, or because of all the issues that are now, stories that are coming out about his womanizing and his treatment of women, does it turn suburban Republican women against Bloomberg, who he thought was part of his base?
Bruce, let me answer it this way. Bloomberg, if he is the candidate, will get suburban women out. The problem is he's not going to get the Sanders crowd. They're just going to stay home again.
That's true.
And so that is the problem, and that's the dilemma.
Are the suburban Republican women a larger number?
No.
We're talking about numbers.
No, they're not a larger number.
Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk about the likelihood of him getting black votes or any Democrat getting black votes. And we will also take more calls. Got a lot of them on the line. I'm Bruce DuMont. Thank you for joining us tonight from Coast to Coast.
A new exhibit from the...
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Let me ask our progressives. Who is your candidate for president right now? David.
I'm anyone but Trump at this point. I was a supporter of Elizabeth Warren.
What happened?
And I mean, I still am. I'll likely still vote for her if she's still in the race when they get to the Indiana primary, because I'm
Did you say
over
Indian
the border.
primary?
Indiana.
Oh, I thought you said Indiana.
But it doesn't look like she's likely to succeed. So
Who's your second choice?
I'm not sure.
Yikes.
I'm not sure. But
Peter.
I'm a, and this is the first election in which I'm an entirely loyal partisan. I will vote for whoever they nominate. If it's If it's Peter, I would gladly vote for Peter.
Can save that
vote
forever
for
in the
me?
room.
Yeah, would you-
Yes, I would vote for you, Josh, over Donald Trump. I would feel
Peter,
less
who-
fearful about
Peter,
the
who
future
is
of
it?
the
Who is your choice?
Speaking purely personally, I think I've been in the show before. I've said that I took a good look at Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, everyone, and after looking at everyone, looking at their record, I think the choice has become more and more clear. And I think Bernie Sanders is the best candidate, not just as a Democrat, but just as an American. I think his record speaks for itself. He's been saying the same thing forever and ever. And I think one of the responses he's given before is really, I think, important because, yes, America will never be a communist country or a pure socialist country or anything like that. But what we have right now is a form of socialism. We have a form of socialism where the government takes the money from the people and redistributes it. Right now, it's being redistributed to corporations largely and to the very wealthy who have the means and ability to form whatever life they want. And I think what you see from Bernie Sanders is if we're going to take a little bit of that money that we're giving back to companies, giving back to wealthy, and start using it to stuff to sort of give people things like healthcare, I think there will come a time when people will look back and say, I can't believe that we commoditized and profited from human health.
But
If I was,
It's
if
about-
I was,
it's
if I was,
Peter, you've said that Bernie Sanders has basically been saying the same thing for many, many years. Are you concerned that his legislative record of success is minimal on the issues that he talks about, and that after 30 plus years in Congress, maybe there should have been a few more things with his name on it that would have dealt with at least a portion of all the stuff that he talks about?
It would irritate these guys and maybe everyone if I rattled off the stuff that he's done successfully legislatively. But let me just say this: Obama.
Talk about healthcare.
I mean, healthcare has been a disaster in this country for a long time. The ACA was largely drafted by the Heritage Foundation and was a complete, miscue.
Free college.
What Bernie Sanders.
Free college.
Free college.
I'm talking about the,
I mean,
the things that he talks about. What has he
He's
done?
one senator.
What is his?
He's one senator, and he's been advocating for this stuff forever. I think as president, with a bully pulpit, and hopefully with a Senate majority, it can get done.
if I
It's
was
going to need
a-
more than a Senate majority to
Well, it depends on the
impose
filibuster.
socialism and communism
Not a
on this
Democrat.
country. Look, this is the guy, same guy who honeymooned in the Soviet Union, who I posted a couple of days ago, gave a lecture several decades ago in which he was lamenting in which he was, praising the Cuban Revolution and lamenting that we didn't have the same thing happen here. I mean, there's going to be so much of that stuff dug up. I really hope it's Sanders. I may even cross over, and this may be the first thing Peter and I agree on tonight, but I may cross over and vote for Bernie
Do it.
Sanders
In the primary, yeah.
because I want to see Bernie Sanders. I mean, you're going to look at a George McGovern versus Nixon.
Hillary
type of-
Clinton really wanted to see
type
Donald
of,
Trump.
type
I want
Sanders-
to tell you, Hillary
election.
Clinton.
He
really
is
wanted
going
see
to
Trump.
turn off
right.
so many
Remember
of
that.
the key swing voters
Sanders
here.
is the riskiest candidate
You think
of
so?
the group.
Why, in your view?
Well, if I was his political consultant, I would have told him a long time ago to stop using the word socialism. It's too loaded.
He's a socialist.
One can play games with language without playing games with principles. But that being said, every major industrial economy in the world combines capitalism
Correct.
and socialism. We already have socialism in this country. The argument is, should we have more of it or should we have less of it? But the word comes with so much baggage that it's probably not politically savvy for him to invoke it so consistently. But just speaking, I would gladly vote for Bernie. I agree with him on nearly everything. But I do share Josh's concerns, although I suppose for Josh they're hopes, that some of that baggage will weigh him down in a general election.
I want to let you respond to this first. Is Amy Klobuchar the most electable Democrat in your view, Stephanie?
I honestly, being that they've been after Trump since he came down the escalator, I cannot believe the lot of candidates that they came up with. None of them can beat Donald Trump, and it disappoints me. I'm not threatened by her or anyone. They can actually wrap three of them together, and they still wouldn't beat Trump because he's putting America first. His policies have already gone into effect. People are living. What is the poll saying? That 90% of the people love their lifestyle and what they're living as a result of his policies. I'm not afraid of
too
her.
far. They don't say
It was
as a
about Amy
result.
Klobuchar. Why do you answer every question
I'm
with
sorry
Donald
about
Trump?
Amy. I'm not threatened by anyone on that side.
I
They
want to
should-
ask our Democrats.
I think-
Is Amy Klobuchar the most electable?
Hell no.
Didn't even
Democrat?
mention her. Didn't
Absolutely
mention her.
not.
Why
She's-
not?
I mean, Amy Klobuchar. Here's the thing: we say like Bernie Sanders is left, far left, radical.
he's a socialist.
Donald Trump is the most radical candidate president ever. Amy Klobuchar is so far to the right. Her criminal justice record is atrocious, and I think just today, interviewed at Telemundo, she couldn't even name the president of Mexico. So no, I would prefer someone a little bit more informed than her.
Hillary
You
Clinton.
say that she was a right-wing federal attorney?
I'm saying
Say
her
right-wing.
criminal justice record was awful. Yes,
Hillary
as a
Clinton-
prosecutor, it was terrible.
Hillary Clinton's unfavorable numbers were worse than Trump's, and yet she lost the presidency because of the Electoral College by 80,000 votes combined over 3 states.
Right.
So I think that any of these candidates, including Bernie Sanders, could defeat Donald Trump.
Donald Trump now has a record to run on.
Right.
And we have a
and
great
what a record it
economy.
is.
It is a great record. It is.
What
Donald Trump
legislation-
is probably the greatest president of my lifetime,
Amen.
and I didn't think I would be saying that.
Wow.
I mean, it is incredible what he has done with the economy, taking on these trade deals.
And
His
when
list of
time, Peter,
accomplishments.
Look at the State of
That's
the
why we
Union.
have Peter Bear.
of course.
That's why we have elections.
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you
Look at the State of the
completely
Union.
you completely disagree. You were raising your eyebrows when Josh was speaking. You completely disagree with Josh. But the point is, we're going to have an election.
Yeah.
And as I think David just said, it's going to probably come down to
Yeah.
about 3 or 4 states
Yes.
and about 70 or 80,000 people.
The McGovern
And we're
map
gonna
is
see who
over.
shows up.
The country's too polarized, and partisanship is too entrenched. We're not going to have landslide victories like Reagan and Mondale.
And by the way, if Trump had lost the 3 states, Wisconsin,
Oh.
Michigan, and Pennsylvania, it would have been 269 to 269. So he came very close in New
Does
Hampshire.
Michael Bloomberg
and
is Michael
Minnesota.
Bloomberg a stronger candidate in the state of Florida
Yes.
that will tip that state likely to the Democrats?
He is a stronger candidate in that state, but I don't think he's a stronger candidate in the upper Midwest states at all.
And I agree with Josh on that.
And I think that you could tip Minnesota to the Republicans with Michael
But Bloomberg,
potentially.
What about Klobuchar?
Klobuchar, I have to say, look, I don't think any of them can beat him, and I agree with Stephanie that I'm surprised they couldn't have come up with somebody better. But a Bloomberg Klobuchar ticket to me is their most competitive ticket, because you're combining two moderates who can appeal to the upper Midwest that way
Peter
with Klobuchar.
knows Bloomberg because he was from New York.
Oh.
Yes.
You're not a fan of Michael Bloomberg's.
No, I am not.
Why not? Well, first of all, you're a fan of Bernie Sanders. So,
Yes.
from an anecdotal standpoint, tell us a little bit about what you knew from the mayor when he was your mayor.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Bloomberg were actually a better candidate, I would say I'd support him. But turns out he's one of the worst candidates ever. I mean,
Why?
well, his track record was pretty well known in New York before he became mayor. He wanted to run as a Democrat, and they basically wouldn't let him, so he ran as a Republican, even though he was very socially, quote unquote, liberal. But once he was mayor, he demonstrated a lot of practices and policies that I think would be terrible as president, like the stop and frisk policy. Everything he did in terms of law enforcement would turn out to be some sort of strangely racist civil liberties nightmare. In addition, he has these sort of kind of petty dictator tendencies, the desire to ban all sugary drinks in New York, to kind of this weirdly paternalistic mentality. I had friends who worked at Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, like top financial firms, and we all, before he even became mayor, this came up. There was a book called The Portable Bloomberg that his employees had written over the years of just weird and crazy, zany things that Bloomberg would say. And I actually got to see it years ago, and I'm sure it'll come up now. It contains all sorts of crazy things about women, about sex, about black people, about immigrants. The man is a nightmare in terms of a candidate, and it's disgusting to me that the DNC allowed him to buy a place in the stage.
however, here's
Wow.
one caveat.
We agree.
He's running the shrewdest and most effective campaign, partially because he can afford to do so.
Yes.
But his tactic of blitzing the public with these short ads that pack an emotional punch
Right.
is wise and effective because it assumes that most voters aren't following politics closely day to day.
That's true.
That's right. I
Whereas
agree with
Warren,
you.
who was the candidate I preferred, one of her problems was she spoke as if the majority of Americans were carefully reviewing all of the policy proposals. And if they were doing so, they would see that hers were the most astute and the most thorough, but most weren't paying attention. So Bloomberg is also capitalizing on the unprecedented level of fear and hostility toward Trump on the Democratic side.
And
But
his
he's
ads
also
reflect that.
but here's my point.
Commercials.
He's also obviously a smart guy.
Yes.
But I don't know how you launch a presidential campaign seeking the Democratic nomination when you have to know that the story that appears in today's Washington Post about his relations with women in the workplace, he didn't harass anybody, but he certainly made it a very unpleasant culture, that's a story.
He was smart enough to stay out of Iowa.
Who's had a baby? Told me
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's go to South Carolina, where Sam is listening to us in Myrtle Beach. Go ahead, Sam.
Yes, Bruce. The Democrats are in a bad place with Bernie Sanders. If he's the nominee, he's going to get blown out. And if he's not the nominee, his people are going to be so angry that there's going to be no healing that rift, I don't think.
David, what do you
Two
think of
times in
that?
a row.
I want to get everybody's. That is the big concern that
That's
that
an
people
that's an
have.
accurate
That's
assessment.
very real.
That's the dilemma that faces the Democratic Party because Bernie Sanders does carry risks as a candidate. But if he wins the most votes, obviously he should be the nominee, and I will support him. And however, if he doesn't win, even if he loses in an entirely legitimate, credible, honest way, he will have a large percentage of his supporters who will refuse to vote for anyone else. So
Sam
that does present a threat to the Democratic Party.
And also, Sam, we have to remember that Democratic primary voters selected George McGovern, Michael Dukakis, John Kerry. They were all selected by the voters. And by the way, Republican primary voters selected Mitt Romney. They selected John McCain. They selected Bob Dole. So both parties have a very good track record of nominating people through their process that really have no popular appeal when it comes to a general election.
It's
Bruce,
difficult. I mean,
But again, you can't take that away
someone
from
like
them.
Obama, for example, that's a once in a generation
Yes,
politician.
and as well as Reagan.
I want to say this. Sam nailed it. In one sentence, Sam nailed the Democrats' dilemma, and that was the Republicans' dilemma in 2016. Stephanie and I were never Trumpers.
Yeah. No way.
We
I was gonna
eventually
vote
Who
came
were you
along.
for? Who were you for
Bruce?
originally?
Oh,
1 second.
Marco Rubio.
Oh,
Rubio,
I
and you
like
were
him.
for?
I was Ted Cruz.
Ted
Yeah.
Cruz. Okay, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, one thing I want to say about Bernie Sanders, I think he is one of the biggest frauds that's ever been. If you look at, there's a company called Old Town Media that he started with family friends and family members,
Mm-hmm.
and they ran $82 million supposedly in advertising and campaign consulting through that company in 2016 and charged 15% commissions.
Did they work with
then
Trump
Ber-
University?
And then Bernie buys a lake house and a sports car. So, and it's the same thing with AOC. You know, she wanted everybody to chip in on her staff and everybody chip in their money so they'd be paid equally, but I bet you she didn't chip in hers.
Wow.
Sam, let me ask you this
Just a
question.
baseless
Sam.
assumption. That's just a
Sam,
baseless
you changed my mind, Sam. Not voting for Bernie. Thanks.
My question is this, Sam, to you. You're calling from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. What is your assessment? We understand where you how you feel about Bernie Sanders, but would you care to make any assessment as to the Democratic likely winner a couple of weeks from now?
If Bernie doesn't get to where he needs to be in delegates, I got to think that there's going to be so many people pushing Bloomberg. It's either going to be Bloomberg or Bernie.
Okay.
I think that's accurate.
Klobuchar,
I agree with
has
that.
all the charisma of the proverbial paint drying.
Yes.
Bloomberg has no abundance of charisma either. He's sort of a charisma
But
vacuum.
he's got the dough, and the
I agree
Democrats
with
are
that, too.
desperate.
He's got $60 billion.
Sam, listen, thanks very much for calling. Good to hear from South Carolina tonight, okay? Let's
Sam.
now head west to Austin, Texas, where Kathy is listening to us on KLBJ. Go ahead.
Hello there. How are
Hi,
you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. Earlier in the show, you were talking about, or you were asking if suburban women would vote for Trump. And I am a suburban woman in Austin, Texas, which is very liberal. And I did vote for Trump in 2016. I'm actually a registered Democrat, have always been a Democrat. But because of the way the party's platform has turned so progressive, I decided to give Trump a try. And yes, he does have a record that he's running on this time, and I'll vote for him again. There's a lot of people who are Trump supporters who cannot talk about it because of the repercussion that we get from liberal Democrats in the areas where we live.
Right.
I can't even put a Trump sign in my yard, or I won't, because I live in a very liberal city. So there's a lot of Trump supporters out there who are kind of under the covers here, and the only time that people really know that we're out there is when we can vote.
Kathy, let me ask you this question, because the general perception of Trump's problem with women, which is stated by Democrats and perpetuated in many cases by the national news media, and that is his personality. He's too rough. He's too gruff. He's rude, crude, and socially unattractive. That's the way the perception of Donald Trump is. And again, he feeds that image himself with a lot of things that he says and the way he does things. And the general thought is that women back away from that. There may be a lot of men that are macho and they like that because he's rock'em sock'em and calls it like it is. But that women, on the other hand, they shy away from that. They don't like that rough and tumble, bare knuckles political discussions and attitude. And you add that some of the charges that have been made against the president and his relationship with women over the years. How do you react? First of all, is there any part of that concern that you have heard articulated by your friends or neighbors who maybe are not going to be supporting Donald Trump?
Well, yes, my friends who are not going to vote for him won't vote for him for all the reasons that you've talked about. But, I live in Texas. I'm used to men being rough and speaking their minds and going after things. Politics is not polite. And through all of these years, and I'm an older woman, so I've been voting for a long time. But through all these years, we've always thought that all these politicians had to be polite people and negotiate in polite ways. But what we're finding out is, what has been going on behind the scenes. And there's been so much corruption that we have heard about, and so many things that have not been truthful that have gone on in politics, that in my mind, in my opinion, I don't have a problem with the way Trump is handling himself.
Stay on the line. I want to ask Stephanie the same question. My description of the at least the perception that media perpetuates that Donald Trump is a turnoff to a lot of women. Would you acknowledge that exists at least somewhere within your sphere of influence?
Well, again, I'm a suburban housewife, and I wasn't turned off, especially that whole clip on him on the bus. that was a moment where he didn't know he was on mic, and just because someone says it doesn't make it so. So I'm not going to go along
How about
with
the
that.
rough and tumble?
He said it.
Rough
How about
and-
the rough and
just
tumble?
because people do locker room talk all the time, I'm not going to be so taken aback by that. I agree with what she was talking about. That he's a strong man that speaks his mind, and so we have this whole thing going on with Bloomberg, kind of similar. But because he's running as a Democrat, he's going to be forgiven. It's going to be forgotten. It's no big deal. But it's okay to have someone that's speaking their mind, and especially when it comes to politics. So many people placate. Like if you listen to the right now, Bloomberg is running an ad on local Chicago radio that says that yes, I pull myself up in the American dream, but if I were black, I probably wouldn't have been able to do that. That ticks me off to no end. Pandering like Hillary did to the black community, that she carries hot sauce in her purse. Stop lying to us. Stop placating to us and talk to us, because black Americans have the same desires as white Americans. We want good schools. We want safe neighborhoods, and we want opportunities. And for the
Volume.
Democrat Party to promise us decade after decade they're going to take care of us and look after us, and when you live in a city like Chicago and you know that's not true, I like what Donald Trump. What did he say in 2016 to the black voters? What do you have to lose? And it's absolutely nothing, because the Democrats have given us
Volume.
nothing.
I just want to ask a question.
Peter.
Do you have daughters?
Yes, I do.
If you heard one of your daughter's boyfriends or husbands or something say what Donald Trump said, would you just say,
I don't know. I'm not throwing. I love my
No, I'm
father
just
dearly.
curious.
I'm not throwing my father under the bus, but he talked like that all. That's how men talk in locker rooms.
That's
what men
That's
do.
not how men
But you know what? If my
Stephanie,
daughter's husband spoke like
time
that,
is running low. I just want to know if you. It's a simple question. If you overheard your daughter speaking as Trump did about
My
grabbing
daughter?
women, your daughter's husband or boyfriend speaking like Trump did about grabbing women by the whatever, would you be cool with it?
I wouldn't be cool with it.
Yeah,
but
it
I
would
mean,
be kinda
but being
disgusting
off-
and
But that was
vulgar
a
and
dirty,
crass.
low down October surprise trick. They had
That's
that tape
some-
all along, trying to
there's
make
a-
people not vote
There's
for
a
him, and they
difference-
still voted for him.
There's a difference between
Kathy?
Still
president
couldn't beat
and
him.
family.
Hillary
Kathy,
still couldn't beat him.
Kathy in
Yes.
Austin, Texas. Thank you very much for calling with your opinion. Okay,
It's not
Thank you.
appreciate it. Go ahead, David.
volume and crudity and cruelty does not project strength. To call Donald Trump a strong man assumes that strength means picking on the weak and the vulnerable. Whether it's mocking a disabled journalist
That didn't
over his
happen. Fake
disability,
news.
it's on video.
It's fake news. But go
Whether
ahead.
it's
Go
whether
ahead. Out
it's
of context. But go ahead. I'll
whether
let you
it's
talk.
mocking women over their appearance, include his political opponents' wives, whether it's mocking everyone's appearance, whether it's mocking people over their history with mental illness, as he did with Ted Cruz's wife. That's not strength. That's weakness, and that's behavior of a bully.
Josh.
Donald Trump
That's
has
behavior of a
proved his
pathetic person.
Donald Trump has proved his strength in his 3 years as president of the United States. What we're talking about is stuff that happened when he was a
last election,
candidate
right.
and before. And there's
already
a
been
difference.
litigated.
And it's
How
already
about
been
attacking
litigated.
someone
and there's,
who's dead?
And there's a
Saying a
difference
congressman is
between,
in hell. Is
between
that strong?
inviting someone like
That's
Donald
strength?
Trump into your family. I wouldn't want Donald Trump to be dating my daughter, for instance, okay, at all, or somebody like that, versus the president of the United States. And what a record.
And
What a
he has
record
to
he has.
Pause. 1-800-723-8289.
There's not a lot of places.
Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. Thank you very much. Say what you just said. You said what? You like to come on the show because?
Well, this is a safe space to support
In
Trump.
Chicago.
Yeah, in Chicago. It's not very many of those places you can do that.
And I just have to say something on a personal level. This is cool to be on with a black conservative and a Jewish conservative. I mean, people hate us in our communities.
Yes, we can't
And-
go to Thanksgiving dinner without being attacked.
Right,
Yeah.
and so I think it's great, Bruce.
Yeah,
I appreciate
Very
it.
you're
good.
a truly diverse show.
Well, we hope so. And even Peter's here.
Yeah.
Even me.
We
The guy
we
just
take immigrants
just
that happily came
came
to
here
this
from
country. We love
Egypt,
it.
a U.S.
We love
citizen,
immigrants.
successful attorney, David Masiotra. Are you Italian? I've never asked you this. Is that the derivation of your name?
Yes, it is. I'm Italian and Serbian American.
Okay,
Oh, very
very good. By the way, we're going to go to a different subject. We have a full board of lights, and to those people who are on the phone, stay on the phone, because when our show officially ends tonight on radio, on the radio stations that you're listening to, and on YouTube as well, we're going to keep going. Since we're live on Facebook, we're going to kind of fade to black for just a couple of seconds, and then we're going to come back and we're going to take the calls that we have because they've been waiting, and we'll carry on our conversation, and we'll see how long we go. We're not going a long time, but again, we're going to try something new that we've not done, and because we are live on Facebook and we're live on YouTube, we can do these things now, and again, the radio people will leave us, but we'll continue to have our conversation. You know, one of the stories that we've briefly talked about is Michael Bloomberg, and again, last week, one of the issues was whether or not Michael Bloomberg's stop and frisk policies when he was mayor of New York would make it very difficult for him to pick up and attract African American voters during the Democratic primary. And then what is broken during this week, and in a huge story in the Washington Post today, if you've not read it, you may find it very interesting. It's a rather devastating story about Michael Bloomberg and his relationship with women who have worked for his company. He had allegedly a very dangerous culture of treatment of women in the Bloomberg companies. So again, it's a story that will likely dominate the news for the next week. And again, we want to mention something, and again, this is for a lot of conservatives, and on this program, if you're a regular listener, we have frequently taken a swipe at the New York Times or the Washington Post because we think that, they're in bed with the Democrats and they're out to get Trump. And again, obviously, I think virtually at least a couple of times a week, they're demonstrating their anti-Trump bias, both of those newspapers. But I do want to say that the stop and frisk story is one that originated from the New York Times, and the story about Michael Bloomberg and his problems with women, at least in the workplace, is a Washington Post story. So these are two traditional liberal Democratic publications that are now communicating and letting the American people know about some two very difficult things for Michael Bloomberg to talk about on his way to the White House. And again, let's take a listen to what Michael Bloomberg had to say, first of all, on the issue of stop and frisk. This is from a taped recording from several years ago in 2015. He's addressing the Aspen Institute. Somebody had their little tape recorder going, and this is what Michael Bloomberg had to say about the controversial stop and frisk program in New York City while he was mayor.
95% of your murderers and murder victims fit into one MO. You can just take the description, Xerox it, and pass it out to all the cops. They are male, minorities, 15 to 20. We put all the cops in the minority neighborhoods. Yes, that's true. Why we do it? Because that's where all the crime is. And the way you get the guns out of the kids' hands is to throw them against the wall and frisk them.
Josh Cantrell, that comment has put him behind the eight ball with a lot of Democrats and a lot of people in the media. They were aghast at those comments. The president's first response was he lashed out in a tweet saying that this demonstrated that Bloomberg was a total racist. It's one of the few tweets that the president pulled back. Did he pull back because there are too many supporters of Donald Trump that agree with that policy?
I don't know why he pulled back, but I suspect that there are supporters of Donald Trump that agree with tough policing policies that have saved countless African American lives, lives of Hispanic kids, and lives of other minority groups who are in disadvantaged neighborhoods. So I think that the original tweet calling Bloomberg's policies racist, Trump realized was wrong.
Well, he called Bloomberg totally racist.
Well, that Bloomberg is not racist, okay? You can say a lot about Bloomberg, but he's not racist, and I don't think
do you agree with that?
I don't think Trump believes that.
Do I agree with? I think Bloomberg is a racist, and I think what we heard. It's actually really interesting. There was some speculation that the Bloomberg campaign itself leaked that audio to get ahead of it because they thought there was going to be a bigger expose or a bigger story coming out. I think he is racist. I think stop and frisk is a policy. Of course, it's been found by courts to be unconstitutional because it is. It disproportionately targets people of color, and I think the way it was implemented in New York did not produce or yield the results that I think some others who advocate for it now would say it does. And the last thing
is that a policy? Is that a policy that you personally think is racist? The policy itself.
Yes, I do think it's racist, and I think it's unconstitutional. And I think at the end of the day, there are a million better ways to achieve the desired result.
Well, I would love to weigh in on that when we come back.
Give us a quick response.
Well,
10 seconds.
It's so much is in that. When we talk about 70% of black children being born without dads, 50 years ago it was the opposite. 70% of black families were intact, loving homes. So as a result of that, we have more boys and young men angry, uneducated on the streets. So disproportionately, we are committing more of the crimes, and we are the victims disproportionately. That's just the result. And you live in Chicago, you read the paper every Monday, you know what's going on.
On that note, I want to thank our Republicans for joining us tonight. They are Josh Cantro and Stephanie
Trussell, that's okay.
Stephanie Trussell, I'm sorry, Stephanie. And also our Democrats, David Masiotra and Peter Hanna. They have joined us. And again, a reminder, if you're listening to this program right now, we're going to say farewell to you. If you're watching us on Facebook Live or on YouTube, stay right where you are. We're going to dip to black in a couple of seconds, and then we'll be back, and we have a full board of lights. We'll take more calls at 1-800-723-8289. I'm Bruce DuMont. Thanks for joining us tonight. Bruce DuMont back in Chicago. We take this a special segment, and we're going to have lots of callers, and so that's why we're extending the segment with our guests. And let's go to Edward. He's been waiting a long time listening to us on WCGO in Evanston, Illinois. Go ahead, Edward.
Yeah, Bruce, good evening. So I'm used to be a Kasich fan, and I voted for Mr. Trump in 2016.
Yeah.
So my 401k is doing good. I work in healthcare, so I definitely don't want to be displaced, and I am confident the private insurance industry is going to get better, so we don't need to go to Medicare for all.
Yeah.
So I will be voting for Mr. Trump in November.
Is there any reservation at all that you have?
Yeah, the tweeting's, bothersome, but not to the point where I would not vote for him. I really look for substance more than personality. You have a party on the other side who is more interested in the way somebody looks or the personality as opposed to economic policy.
What do you mean by the way they look?
Well, it's racial politics,
Why do you think, Edward?
Edward,
why do you think that the African Americans who were running for president in the Democratic Party, and I will also include,
Deval Patrick?
Yeah, well, and also the
Cory
Booker. Why do you think they've not done well in the Democratic primary field?
Personality, bad messaging. So
I want to ask Stephanie. Stephanie,
why,
at the beginning of this process, everyone was touting the diversity of the Democratic field. What's your answer to the question why the African Americans and the Mexican American did not do well in this primary?
Well, again, of substance, what were they bringing to the table? And I know Kamala had a lot of issues with how she was a prosecutor and her issues with that. Cory, just weak. I mean, they just weren't great candidates. And just because you're in that packaging doesn't mean that everybody's going to love you. And so I joked about last time when they ran against Trump, it was 3 white people. And I'm thinking right after Obama, they didn't have a more diverse candidate right after his term, 8 years. And so now they just threw a bunch of people together, and there wasn't a lot of there. So that's why they just,
I would also add that Joe Biden commands a lot of support in the African American community. Now, as I've said on this show even a year ago, Bruce, Joe Biden's going nowhere.
Yeah,
he's done.
he's done.
I mean,
Stick a
he's
fork
basically
in him.
toast right now. But
You said he was dumb.
Done.
I said he was dumb, and now I'm saying he's done.
Dumb and done. Okay.
He's dumb and done. But anyway, that was an issue, and Kamala's prosecutorial background hurt her as well.
To build on what Josh said, just very briefly, I think Biden has taken up the moderate lane to the exclusion of a bunch of other moderate candidates. And then I think if you look at Cory Booker, Beto O'Rourke, They were all trying to claim sort of like the Obama lane, and they failed because of Pete Buttigieg, who I think is obviously not a particularly good candidate. So I think that's why they bounced out. But just to Edward from Evanston, I do want to say, I understand your 401k is doing well. I understand that things seem to be doing well. But you said you want someone with substance and not personality. Take a hard look at Trump's actual policies, and take a hard look at what it means for the future of the country, and you'll find that the substance isn't there. But obviously, vote however you want. But it's not just about your 401k. It's about the future of this country.
David?
We have to address this discussion of the economy, which is increasingly disconnected from the reality of most Americans. Over 50% of Americans make under $30,000 per year. 50% of Americans have under $500 of savings, which means they're one financial mishap from total devastation. 44 million Americans have a staggering amount of student loan. The average credit card debt per household is near $20,000. So we can look at the unemployment rate and the stock market. And by the way, most Americans don't own any stock, directly or indirectly. And that doesn't address the reality, which is one of precarity for over 50% of the country. And that's often left out of these economic forecasts and appraisals.
Why do people, according to polls, why do people seem to feel good about what's going on?
I can't.
If their reality is, as you say it, they're not feeling that level of loneliness and loss. They're feeling just the opposite.
I have to quote another leader who maybe Trump aspires to be, but Julius Caesar, bread and circuses. The country is entertained and it's mostly fed. We don't have a massive crisis in that respect.
And Bruce, you also, to address David's point, you also have the biggest rise in wages is among lower income workers than it is among higher income workers.
Uneducated high school dropouts, all those incomes are going up.
And minorities, unemployment is at record low. And I mean, there's just been a lot of focus and growth in that area. So I think that, Trump has only been in office 3 years. The issues you talk about, which are fair, and I agree with with
certainly
you,
they definitely predate
decades
Trump.
long.
They're decades
I can
long.
argue that he was solely the fault,
Right.
or solely the culprit.
One thing
excuse me.
I would also like to hear, because the Democrats frequently talk about all of the corporations that aren't paying any federal income tax, and it's a long list of well-known companies. I would like to see a Democrat or with some Republican come up with a plan that these companies should be taxed in some way.
Bernie Sanders literally has that plan. Elizabeth Warren has that plan on.
What
Bloomberg has a plan.
Why didn't Obama have that plan?
Klobuchar has the plan. They're all
Been in
different.
off-
They're varying
well,
levels.
You were the one who said nothing
Warren
about
and
nothing
Biden
pre-2016.
have been in
and
the
you're talking
Senate
about
how long?
Obama. Why are we talking about Obama?
What I want to hear, I want to hear it in a debate. I don't want them to tell me go look at my website. I want to hear it articulated, just as Andrew Yang, I think, clearly articulated his $1,000 a person,
I need
which
$1,000.
was interesting.
Man,
That sounded like a pretty good deal to
Yeah,
a lot
I'm
of
like,
people,
I
and
need
he
it.
was one of the first to go. We've got to move on. Thank you very much. Let's go to Jeff in Knoxville, Tennessee, listening to us on WNOX. Nice to hear from Tennessee this evening.
Bruce, I appreciate your call and appreciate the program. I heard earlier mention of the 2018 election in terms of the loss of House seats by the Republicans.
Yes.
And what that might portend for this fall's races.
Right.
I'm sort of amazed that the knowledge to the Mueller investigation that there was no Russia collusion with Trump was known in 2017, yet that basically uncertainty was held over the electorate of this country in a way that I find so outrageous and so disturbing. Paul Ryan did not have I think there was enough uncertainty still in terms of Trump, who he was and his performance, and timidity in terms of how to navigate Washington. But as far as I'm concerned, that election was tampered with by the Mueller investigation, and I'm concerned that there's not more interest from my civil liberty concerned of friends across the political spectrum, particularly on the left, of the fraud that was committed committed on the FISA court. And I'm just concerned that as long as we hate Trump or whatever, then we almost have justify a mob mentality, so that Stone can go to prison forever, and we can ruin people's lives. And I mean, even people that I don't care for, I don't want to see their life ruined. And hopefully there can be a cascade of as more is revealed with the Durham investigation as to what really occurred with the Russia investigation that will, I think, help Americans see what happened in 2018 as a real fraud upon the electorate.
Okay, Peter Hanna will have a comment.
Yeah, no, it's just interesting. I actually spent the time, as much as I really didn't want to, reading the Mueller report in its entirety, and I think part of the reason that you're articulating the views you're articulating is because most people didn't. Most people relied on secondary sources to explain what exactly was contained in it. If you take the time to look at it, and honestly, I can't even recommend that you do because it's really painful to read, you will find that there was a lot of criminal activity that occurred. In the end, what the ultimate outcome was that there is a Department of Justice policy that says the president cannot be criminally indicted. That's just the policy. That's just the way it is. The only thing that could occur is impeachment if you want to keep the president in check. And there were multiple footnotes in the report that cited the impeachment clause of the Constitution, saying we can't do anything, but it's impeachable. And then what happened? The House didn't even bring anything up in the Mueller report as a basis for impeachment. So I think a lot of people have the view you do, caller from Knoxville, that there was no there, but there was there. As to whether it will loom over the 2020 election like it did in the 2018 election, you're right. I don't think Mueller report is going to come up much in Democratic or liberal or like get out the vote, turn out conversations, but there's a lot of other stuff that will loom.
I think, Jeff, you nailed it absolutely in terms of your question. And if you read the Mueller report, which I did read the executive summary, I didn't read the whole report, Mueller clearly found that there was no collusion. So if there were crimes, they would have been prosecuted.
Exactly.
Okay,
So
Jeff, we're gonna go ahead. Last word to you, and then we're gonna move on.
Peter, you served time in or spent time in the Justice Department. Are you not concerned by the representations made to the FISA court?
You know what? Honestly, the FISA court stuff has always been extremely cryptic and secret. But if there were any misrepresentations, whether it was by Trump and his folks or Obama and their folks or anyone, I don't really care about the party. I think there needs to be the equal administration of justice. So if there were misrepresentations to the FISA court that led to the wiretapping of Trump associates and whatnot, I think an investigation will determine that that's there, and then the DOJ should take next steps. But look at the whole thing with McCabe, right? Everyone who supported Trump wanted McCabe behind bars, and Bill Barr himself declined to prosecute him. So let's let the investigation play out, and if there is wrongdoing on either side, we should see to it. But I do want to emphasize, Jeff, that there was a lot of wrongdoing in the Mueller report. It wasn't just collusion. Collusion is not even a crime. It's just a word that I think a lot of people intentionally used to say this is the only thing that Trump can go down for. Josh said if something bad had happened, there'd be prosecutions. Well, there have been. There have been Paul Manafort, Roger Stone. There's several others. And actually, one last thing, truly. A lot of people complain, the Mueller report, we spent $29 million on that piece of crap, and what the heck, no collusion. Well, the Mueller report has led to prosecutions that has recovered back into the U.S. Treasury more than $100 million in assets from abroad. So in some way, it's paid for itself. And I challenge you, because you sound like an intelligent guy, look it up. Look it up, see for yourself.
Manafort and all these other
Thanks for the call, Jeff.
didn't have anything to do with Russia. They had to do with things that Manafort was doing way before he ever joined the Trump campaign.
That's not true.
But it is.
Stephanie, word to you, and then we're going to go back to another call.
Well, it's just so interesting to me that, again, we're talking about what we're doing for 2020 in November, and a lot of this was before the election. And since this time, okay, I'm losing. I got so much. Okay, it was nothing but nothing burger after nothing burger, investigation after investigation, and maybe we can't, cart him off to jail because he's the president. But I kept hearing that his children were involved. All these other people, we can certainly prosecute Donald Jr. and Eric Jr. because according to the left, they were also involved in this. They kept telling everybody, promising the Mueller report, this is going to be it. The Ukraine report, this is going to be it. And time after time, the most corrupt, the most dangerous president ever to hold office, and they still can't seem to get him on anything. So
We've got to move on. Brian, we're going to go to you. You're listening to us on Sirius XM Radio. You're calling from Missouri. Whereabouts in Missouri?
I'm in Jefferson City.
Very good, the capital. Go ahead. How can we help you tonight?
My question is for Stephanie. I keep hearing you say how great he's doing and all the stuff he's doing, and I have become a political junkie over the last 2 years. I am a black middle-class union worker who is putting 2 twin daughters through college, and I get my ass kicked on taxes all the time. And it's gotten worse since this tax cut. You tell me one reason why I would vote for that guy.
Well, oh my goodness.
Give me a reason.
I'll give you lots of reasons. We don't have enough time to cover everything, but
I want one. Just give me one.
Okay, well, let me tell you why you should vote for Donald Trump, because he wants to seal our borders, because open borders disproportionately affects. You gonna let me talk?
You should let me talk. You should let him respond.
Can I stop you
No,
right
wait,
there?
I didn't even get it all out.
You gave him a reason.
No, it disproportionately affects
me.
Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Back
I
to
want
you.
to know what you're doing for me. Not about the
for me?
border. I don't care about that. What is he doing for me that's going to help me as an American? I'm not worried about the border.
Okay, let's let Stephanie respond.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I can only speak from Chicago because that's where I was born and raised. And I know the porous borders, open southern border, disproportionately affects black people negatively. And I mean, that's just fact. Their resources are being put in Hispanic neighborhoods because they constantly have a plethora of new people coming across demanding dentists and grocery stores, where in the neighborhood I grew up, everything's boarded up because people are leaving. The schools are closed. And I'm just telling you, if you can drive down the Pulaski Road in Chicago, you can see the Hispanic neighborhood is booming. No empty vacant lots, no garbage, grocery stores. My neighborhood, you go under the viaduct at 22nd and Pulaski, it looks like a bomb went off 30 years ago. So I know, do the numbers. We need to e-verify. We need to make sure people coming across, we know who they are, because it's disproportionately affects the black neighborhood. So, and that's why you should vote for Donald Trump.
Peter, and then Josh, and then back to you.
I'm also from Illinois, and I also have been down those same streets you're talking about. And the reason why the Mexican community do so well is because they put money back in their own families. It's not because of something that Donald Trump did.
You're 100% right.
No,
you're 100% right.
No,
you challenged.
That is not the truth. I was a cop in Illinois, so I'm telling you what I know.
No.
This is not some dream that I'm making up. This is not some
same here.
propaganda that I'm putting
not
out there.
using
I'm telling
E-Verify
you what I
hurts
see.
black unskilled black workers. Period. And people are not using E-Verify. They're hiring illegals, taking jobs away from Americans.
And I just want to say to the caller. Listen, you challenged her to give you one thing, and you heard nothing. And that is the truth. There is
not one
nothing.
thing.
Okay.
My taxes, I don't make millions of dollars.
Well, you have a very
Stephanie,
bad
can I-
tax
may I-
accountant,
may I
sir.
finish?
If your taxes
May I
didn't go
speak?
down this last tax
Stephanie,
cut, because mine did.
can I just
10
speak? Go
million
ahead.
Americans paid more
Mine did.
taxes more in taxes because of the Trump tax
that's
policy.
no.
And the majority of those were people who did a great deal of freelance work, which I'm in that group because I'm a writer.
I would
That's
like
10
to
million
address
people.
Brian. You said you have twin boys, correct?
Twin daughters.
Twin daughters. Those twin daughters are going to enter a better job market and have a better chance at life because of what Donald Trump's economy and economic and deregulation and all of the things he's done, reducing the minority unemployment rate to the record low ever.
And Josh, if they lose their jobs, I'm sorry, Brian, if they lose their jobs, they're screwed.
And you know
if they
what?
get into the criminal justice system, they're screwed.
And your
if
black
they can't
daughters
afford,
will
excuse
have
me,
school
excuse
choice.
Me, Stephanie, I'm talking. Excuse me, Stephanie.
Okay, I'm just
and
saying.
if they get in trouble,
reply
they
to
are
you-
screwed. Okay,
no.
your
My
your
reply to you is
your
about
daughters.
the-
Your daughters.
About the economy and the job market, my reply to you is that my daughters are going to do well because of what I've taught them.
Amen.
Exactly.
Because
But
of something
school
that Donald
choice,
Trump
school
did.
choice.
And
Democrats
and
do
like
not
I-
want us to have
like
school
I
choice.
Said, like
They
I
don't.
said, Democrats This is not about. We're not talking about Democrats. I'm
They always
asking you
say
what
that.
Donald Trump is actually doing for this.
You
for
watch
me.
the State of the
He's
Union.
done
You
nothing.
watch the State of the Union.
Brian, you've made your point. You got an answer. You didn't like it. Let's go to
No,
Mark.
he got
in
an answer that was
Carmel,
wrong.
California,
He got an answer that was false.
listening to us on KION. Go ahead, Mark.
Yes, Bruce, I like the after show. So this is actually rather entertaining,
Yeah.
and I expect we can speak a little more freely here. Although,
Yeah, come to think of it, yeah, but we don't want to get in the habit of that. Go ahead.
No, I got you, but it's not a bad venue because, frankly, it keeps adds to your revenue. It's all good. So I was a Tea Party guy back in 07, 08, and we got horribly disenfranchised in 10 with Lois Lerner shutting us down and stopping the whole thing, the weaponizing the IRS. And so we kind of went underground, and we showed our little heads again a couple of years later, and we got the House back. And so that kind of hobbled Obama. And frankly, in hindsight, I'm glad that Mitt Romney didn't get the nod because he's shown his own true colors. Mm-hmm. And I was a Cruz supporter, as my wife was, during the early elections. And then when it came down to Trump, we kind of held our noses and voted for Trump. But we have been pleasantly surprised with what he has done. And this is the key word for here, because nobody has mentioned this. What he has achieved under duress. He's been under duress since day one. Okay, I mean, so it took 32 months for them to finish the Mueller investigation. So that led him to a great win, and they got the House back, and Nancy Pelosi in 18, and woohoo. But I got to tell you, we are a sleeping giant, and we're still out there. And if you look at simply the ratings of what people watch, and you see CNN and MSNBC and all these other liberal programs where a lot of people turn them on and click them on, and they're retirees, and they watch them all day long, and they listen to the brainwashing, well, the numbers show that a lot more people are watching Fox and listening to Fox and the diatribe that we're getting on Fox. So we're much more educated about the malfeasance of the past, the atrocities that happened during the Obama administration. When somebody earlier mentioned the occurrence on the tarmac between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton, well, my God, how much does that eclipse what they actually impeached President Trump for? This is appalling to me. You talk about abuse of power. My God, we have an ex-president reaching out to a sitting attorney general that got charges somehow magically changed the language to where Comey came out and gave a 12-minute indictment of Hillary and a 13th-minute exoneration of her, saying nobody in their right mind would prosecute her because they're all afraid of getting Epstein. That's a new noun.
Comey
Nobody wants to
said
get
that?
Epstein
Comey
by the
didn't say
Clintons.
that.
Mark, let me just say that
Comey said I didn't prosecute Hillary because she would have killed me. You believe James Comey said that?
You're watching too much Fox News, dude.
Mark, you have nailed it when you said in your opening comment, look at what this president has accomplished under duress. He has been chased from the moment he was elected. And look at what he's accomplished.
Full court press from the media, from the Democrats, and the never Trumpers.
What are the accomplishments?
Mark, we've got to
Thank you
go.
so much, and Stephanie, I want you to run for office.
Oh, thank you. You're too kind. That's not my calling, but thank you.
Mark, thank you very much. Always nice to hear from Carmel, California. Let's go to Caesar, listening to us in Dallas, Texas. Go ahead.
Well, I'm in Oklahoma now.
Okay.
I just crossed over into the Oklahoma border, and I'm in Choctaw country and near Durant, Oklahoma.
Very good. Well,
But,
nice to hear from Oklahoma tonight.
Yeah, but I am from Texas. But just to go back, I think, well, the first thing is I will never vote for Trump. I never supported him in the first place and never will because I think he's too divisive. I think that he plays on the worst of who we are as human beings and Americans, and he divides us. That's number one. Number two, I think that when you talk about accomplishments and all of the things that are happening, the economy that we have today is because of Barack Obama's policy. That's the reason why we're here today. No one can run away from that, except that that's the truth. Here's the third thing. The third thing is that Donald Trump came out to abolish the Affordable Care Act without having anything to replace it. I'm a diabetic. I have a pre-existing condition, and they were ready to take that away from me where I had no cover whatsoever. And that was an abomination to me, all for the sake of politics, I will never vote for Donald Trump. And I don't support him for that reason. For moral reasons, number one, yes, there are a lot of things that you vote for people for, partly because of the economy, but there are also moral reasons that you vote for people. And yes, if I can't feel good about this person saying something about my daughter, then I can't feel good about voting for them for president.
Caesar, stand by. I want to ask a question to Josh, but stand by. I want to give you the last word. Josh, can you speak to Caesar's point that that President Trump and the Republicans in Congress, they were so focused on tearing down Obamacare that they never took the time, even though they had years to plan it, they never had the Republican plan in place with the votes to get it passed. And that people like Caesar ask a legitimate question is, why are you throwing something out when you don't have a replacement for it?
They did have a replacement. They were all ready to do it. And then John McCain, who ran such a weak campaign against Obama. Thank goodness we had Palin to at least be the attack dog and go after some of Obama's questionable associations. But in any event, they had it ready to go. And then John McCain came in at the last minute and screwed Trump because he didn't like Trump.
What was the name of the bill?
So
What was the name of the
here-
bill?
yeah,
It was
What
already.
was it? What was the bill that the Republicans were gonna? What was it called? What was it? What were
I
its
don't-
features?
I do not
That was not a
remember the
vote
name
on
of
a
the bill.
replacement.
I think it was
Caesar,
called
what's
the
it? Caesar, wait a minute. Caesar,
But there
go
was a
ahead.
bill
Let
to
Caesar.
replace it.
There was no replacement.
There was nothing.
Don't have it because they didn't have it. They didn't have an answer for it. I work in healthcare. I watch the benefit and the access of people that get access to healthcare. I've watched it improve people's health because of what it's able to do. I've watched the health industry totally change before my eyes. I've been in it for 25 years. I work as a chaplain, frontline chaplain, emergency room in a major hospital in Dallas, Texas. I watched the Affordable Care Act literally change how hospitals deal with their patients.
Caesar, you know what? I know a lot of small business owners
what you do, Caesar, and thank you
think that
for
it's affordable.
actually
They
speaking the
absolutely
truth.
tell me it's
because
not
what
affordable.
we're going to hear from the Republicans again and again are lies. There was no replacement. 20 million
Yeah,
more.
there
20
wasn't a
million.
replacement.
20 million more people have health care,
That they
and
can't
you're
afford,
right.
that
I
they
work
don't
for
have
a
access to, and they
Caesar,
don't-
tell
they
your
don't
friends,
have- they
tell
can't afford
everyone
it.
in
It's not
Texas,
affordable health
because
care.
even if there's a 1% chance, a 1% chance to win Texas, that will do it.
No, let me explain.
Crucial point,
Yes,
Caesar.
but
I'm
let
sure
me
you're
just
aware
say
of this.
Let me just say this. Let me say this about the Affordable Care Act.
It's not affordable. It's
Number
Obamacare.
one,
Let him talk.
Go ahead.
Well, you can call it whatever you want to.
It's
I
Obamacare.
got health care. You can call it Obamacare, Affordable Care.
It's not
I don't
affordable.
care what you call it. I got access to health care. And there are a bunch of people that get access to health care.
Okay, I got to tell you,
important.
I am a
Here's
type
the
2
other thing
diabetic.
that-
No, and but
Here's the
this
other
is
thing
this.
that's the
Tell
problem.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's the other thing that's the problem. The
Okay.
other thing that's the problem is the fact that now they've taken out the ability for the government, for folks that didn't participate in it, to do it. Now, I have to pay $900 a month for my premium. $900 a month for my premium to cover me and my family. I got a 26-year-old daughter that's in law school at Stanford. I cover her. I cover everybody in my family. But it's gone up. It's gone up 40% of my income is
Caesar,
gone
Caesar,
Caesar,
thank you for speaking
Okay,
truth. Caesar, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to. Stephanie wants to respond,
just
and then
please.
we're going to move on to another caller. Okay?
Well, I'm a type
Stephanie.
2 diabetic. My husband has worked really hard. We have 5 children over the years, and he's gone from job to job when he got a better opportunity. Never had a problem covering me. Every gain that my husband has made since Obamacare was implemented, I keep thinking about how much our premiums have gone up. And they kept telling us Obamacare was the answer, was the be all. It was going to be the next thing best thing since sliced bread. Less people have access to it. When they complain about healthcare now, all I keep thinking about, every TV show I watch about ER and all this, they're always talking about how horrible it is. But Obama, he should have tweaked it instead of taking down a very good healthcare. Our premiums, $900. I would love to switch places.
We got to say farewell. We're going to take Dave in El Paso, Texas. We got 2 callers left. Go ahead.
Hi, I hope you can hear me. I just want to make a couple points. The first thing is, it is indisputable that Obamacare has actually driven up the cost of health care for tons of people.
Amen. Thank you.
High five.
And now, my second point with regards to Obamacare is, there was a much more efficient and less costly way to increase insurance coverage. We could have done that through subsidies, tax credits, et cetera, for those who really needed it without disrupting the entire medical system. My wife was a physical therapist, and I saw the disruption to her hospital, to the entire hospital system, caused by the ACA. Those are the points regarding that. What I really called for was some comments made earlier in the show with regards to the president's unfortunate comment about grabbing the crotch of women. Well, I'd like to ask you, the Democrats on the panel, what they now think about that comment in light of what's called the wit and wisdom of Michael Bloomberg, that apparently is 32
Peter discussed
pages
that during the
of gross
program.
comments. And I apologize if I missed that. So I won't. If you've already commented on the show,
No,
then
we'll let Peter respond
time.
to it because, again, this is going to be the dominating subject of this coming week until we get to next Saturday when Nevada
Let me
votes.
say
So go
one
ahead.
other thing. I am not excusing the president's. I'm not excusing the president's comment. It was gross.
Yes.
I'm not excusing it all. I'm just saying, how do you regard it differently now in light of Michael Bloomberg, or better yet, do you regard Michael Bloomberg as a less viable candidate now in light of this book of alleged?
Well, let me stop. Peter already articulated his position. He's not a Michael Bloomberg fan, so I want David you to tackle this. What has been coming out and was out today in the Washington Post? Does that make Michael Bloomberg less of a viable candidate to you?
Are you asking me?
No, I'm asking
first,
David. I'm asking
I-
David
I
here,
never-
and then we'll go to David in El Paso. What about
I'm
David in
sorry.
El Paso?
Well, David El Paso would never consider Michael Bloomberg or Mr. Bloomberg a viable candidate anyway. I'm a conservative.
I don't want any
would say
sexual predator billionaires at all in the White House. I don't want Trump. I don't want Bloomberg. They're both trash, and Bloomberg's a dumb idiot for what he wrote and said.
I thought it was my turn to talk.
Yeah, I'm
Go
just
ahead.
summarizing because I gotta go.
Go ahead.
And I thought we were going to have like a civil.
Well, we did talk about this already, so we're trying to be
discussion or
brief now because we're 30
Okay,
minutes over.
so
Go ahead,
the
David.
bottom.
I was just going to say it's
Let David finish his
bottom
point.
line is, I don't think that Mr. Bloomberg is a viable candidate, and you can continue to disparage the president all that you want. But I'm just asking you: do you, on the panel, who have indicated some that you think Bloomberg is a viable candidate, do those comments that are apparently he made?
If by
do they
viable
change
you
your
mean
mind?
he could possibly succeed, I said he was running a shrewd and effective campaign. I didn't say I'm personally supporting him.
Yep. So
I don't know
I
the
asked you-
the precise details of the comments.
They don't think so. David, we've got to say farewell. We got one last caller, Kevin in Chicago, listening to us on YouTube. Go ahead.
Hey guys, it sounds like I have the final word, so
You do.
I'll just make a point. There's a lot of convenient amnesia on both sides. The folks that want to talk about the imperative and the cost of the Mueller report are the same people that forget that the Clinton impeachment began with an investigation of Hillary Clinton's real estate deals in Arkansas, took over 4.5 years, and it cost over $70 million. So if you want to talk about cost and imperative, I'd say that looking at collusion from Russia is much more important than looking at real estate deals in Arkansas. So,
agreed.
You know, you could argue that both are questionable, right? One was a fishing trip that took 4 years. One was less costly and took half a year. So I think everybody needs to think about their own homes or their own houses before they start throwing stones.
Okay, well stated. We've got to go. I want to thank our progressives. Peter Hanna, thank you very much. David Masiotra, thank you very much. Our conservatives, Josh Cantro and Stephanie Trussell. We thank you all for being with us on this expanded edition of Beyond the Beltway. And if you enjoyed it, send me an email to beyondthebeltway@gmail.com and let me know whether you like it or not. And again, let me know where you heard it, because I'm not quite sure who's hearing this or seeing it. I know who's not hearing it and seeing it, but I want to know who did hear it. I'm Bruce DuMont. Good night from Chicago.